So, welcome to the next session of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Blake Morgan, who is a customer experience futurist, a keynote speaker, and an author. Oh, she's also a fellow Forbes contributor. Hi, Blake. How you doing?
Hi, Adrian. Great to be here.
Good. So, it's not very often, but it's sunny here, and you're in California, and it's probably sunny here, but it's actually sunny here as well in the UK. So that's something we have. Hopefully, we have in common. 'Cause it's not very sunny sometimes in spring in the UK. So I say that with a smile on my face today. But
you guys deserve some sun since you just had Brexit. I feel like it's been a rough week for you, so you deserve like a little bit of sunshine.
That's a really good point. So Blake, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and a bit about some of the work that you do? Just so you give us a bit of background.
Yeah, so I fell into this industry sort of by mistake. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I had the opportunity right out of college to produce the content of conferences.
Right.
And I got so lucky because I built a sort of friendship with the chairman of the company, and he was launching a social network and online magazine all around contact centers.
Right.
And as I dug more and more into this topic, I just fell more in love with it, with customer experience, with what was changing. At the time, we were calling it Web 2.0.
Yeah.
And I never got bored even for a second. So a few years later, I took a job actually as a practitioner for Intel, which is a chip maker.
Uh-huh.
And then I decided I really liked being my own boss.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became my own boss. And that leads me to basically where I am today. As a speaker, I'm coming out with a book and a thought leader, and I'm all over the web talking about customer experience. So
yes, you are.
Here we are right now talking about it again.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, you're just about to publish a new book, and it's called More is More, How the Best Companies Work Harder and Go Further to Create Knock Your Socks Off Customer Experiences. That's some title. But so can you tell me a little bit more about the book and sort of how it came about, when it's due out, and its sort of central thesis, who's it for, that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. So customer experience is not just customer service. It doesn't just mean how we treat our customers after they swipe the credit card. Customer experience is baked into the very seed of the company, from design, engineering of the product, to how you manage your people, to how they work together, to how you sell your product, how you engage with the customer around the product, and then any type of relationship you have with your customer after the credit card is swiped. And so the whole premise of the book, we're all familiar with the phrase less is more, but when it comes to being competitive today, in an era where products and services are largely the same, the most compelling differentiator is actually that customer experience wrapped around the product and service.
Okay. But central to the book is this idea about sort of, that you say, creating knock your socks off customer experience, and within the book you talk about this acronym which is Do.O.M.O.R.E. So that's the central. I feel like one of the central spines of the book. I mean, can I ask you to tell me a little bit more about the acronym and so what it stands for, and kind of who the dog is that's barking in the background? But also back to the acronym, sort of saying what should companies be thinking about or doing more of when it comes to the customer experience.
Yeah, sorry, my little dog. Her name is Blinny.
Yeah, welcome, Blinny.
Blinny means blintz in Russian. She's like a little pancake. And that little pancake, that furry little pancake, loves to be a guest on any media I'm producing. So if you work from home like I do and you have babies and dogs, like, just don't even try to make everything perfect, because it's never going to happen.
We've never had a dog on the show before, so welcome, Blinny.
All right. Thank you, Blinny. For those of you who want to imagine her, she looks like a cross between a little bat and a rabbit. She's a black terrier with bright blonde eyebrows, so she's quite funny looking. So basically, back to the concept you mentioned, the do more concept is basically what the entire book is built upon.
Yep.
And this is the idea that companies who do more for the customer end up being more successful and winning more customers overall. And do more is actually an acronym.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to walk you through the acronym real quickly so your listeners can have explanation for what this thing means. Basically, the D of do more is designing something special.
Okay.
So not only does your offering have to be compelling, but you need to start with a product or an experience that people really love. It has to be unique. It has to be a special offering. Mm-hmm. Second is offering a strong employee experience.
Okay.
I love the example from Disney that in their contact centers, they really want their employees to have a smile in their voice. In fact, Adrienne, as I'm talking to you, I'm smiling right now, and my voice probably sounds different than if I'm just talking to you like this with a frown. So clearly, if I'm a happy employee and I'm literally smiling at work, the work is going to be better. The experience the customer has of the work will also be better. And that's not just for the folks working in the contact center. That has to do with every employee at the company, because every employee's work has an impact on that product and that service.
Uh-huh.
The M stands for modernizing with technology. And I would say that technology provides the biggest either gap or reason why some companies are really great, really killer when it comes to offering a supreme customer experience and why others can't. And that has to do with the way they use technology to engage customers, and it has to do with the technology that's implemented within the organization that allows teams to move quickly. Mm-hmm. The O is obsessing over the customer. You're not going to accidentally have a very successful organization today. That obsession with the customer has to begin from the very, very inception of the company. And I love Amazon, as many of our listeners probably do too. Jeff Bezos, this wasn't an accident. From the beginning, he had the wherewithal to know that he needed to create a seat for the customer at the table, no matter what meeting it was. And so companies like Amazon are obsessing over the customer. When the customer contacts the company, Amazon doesn't see it as a hindrance. They see it as an opportunity. In fact, I recently, like 2 days ago, purchased a new toothbrush from Amazon, but I accidentally didn't get the right one. I have a Sonicare. I'm sure many of our listeners have electric toothbrushes. So exciting to live in the age of modern technology where we have to do so little work to brush our teeth. But I didn't buy the replacement heads. I bought the whole darn thing again. So I called them and I said, "Hi, Amazon. I have this toothbrush. I bought the wrong thing. I need to return it, but it says I can't." So they said, "You know what? Just keep the darn thing. Give it to somebody you like, and we're going to just replace it with what you need."
Nice.
Or give money back. And so this obsession over the customer, this feeling like, you know what, we like you, the customer, and we want to hear from you. You're not an annoyance. You're our guest in our home. These are the types of attitudes that differentiate some companies from others. Okay. The R has to do with rewarding responsibility and accountability, because in any customer-focused organization, you have to have some kind of governance structure. So it's clear who's responsible for what, and when something goes wrong, you can kind of trace back to whose problem it actually was and where things went wrong. Mm-hmm. Want to hire people who feel ownership over every single customer. We've all worked at companies or dealt with companies where you feel like the employees have this attitude like, not my problem, not my job. I just work here, lady. But actually the companies that are more successful, it's ingrained in the culture. The employees are responsible. They feel a sense of ownership, and they're happy to block and tackle for the customer. Every single customer is important. And lastly, embracing disruption and innovation. And today, every industry basically is threatened by what's happening out there with startups, with disruption innovation. When Uber came along, you didn't have customers that were diehard fans and loyal to the taxi industry, like, "Oh, I'll never take an Uber. I love my taxi." No way. They're like, "Yeah, we're going to flock to services and products that make our lives easier and better." And so every company today needs to have an eye on the horizon, looking at how they can innovate, how they can better meet customer needs, and they need to learn how to move quickly, because a lot of these companies, especially in the States, are struggling because they're too big. They move too slow. In fact, Target just had a terrible quarter. Target's a major retailer here based in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And what the COO came out and said is that we're too big, we move too slow, we have too much inventory, and they didn't realize how much Amazon would be massacring them. Right. So you're right. So the Do.O.M.O.R.E framework illustrates every piece of customer experience and how companies today can improve what they're doing to be more competitive tomorrow.
Perfect. So I wager that you, a bit like me, you get probably a little bit frustrated sometimes when the same old examples get trotted out over and over, whether it's Zappos or it's Amazon or it's Nordstrom or Southwest Airlines or yada yada yada, all the other sort of usual suspects. So I'd be curious to know, in the kind of process of researching and writing the book, if you came up with some interesting and unusual or new or even just old traditional kind of companies that you think actually they embody the do more sort of, if you like, ideal or sort of set of behaviors. And if you've got a couple of examples of companies that you think actually they're not much talked about that fit that sort of framework and sort of embody that type of experience, then it'd be great if you could share those with us.
Yeah, my favorite example comes from Airbnb because to me they illustrate the way that customers want to work with companies.
Okay.
As a customer, when I book an Airbnb hotel, well, I'll call it a house. When I book a house, I'm interacting with the host or the company in the same way that I would interact with my friends or my family.
Right.
I can text with the host. I can easily choose and shop on my phone and do everything from my phone. So it's a wonderful kind of design approach to how they allow customers to engage with them through text, through the phone. And it also comes back to how they treat their people in the contact center. And they do a lot so their contact center agents actually have had some Airbnb experiences, so they know exactly what goes into the making of the sausage, so to speak. Right. They're familiar with how the company works. Another example comes from Sephora. Sephora, when it comes to digital, is just killing everyone else because they are not afraid of the new technologies. For example, I just gave a presentation in San Diego on chatbots. A chatbot is a bot that can have a conversation with a person.
Yeah.
And companies like Sephora are doing wonderful work with these new messaging apps where the chatbots live, such as Kik, such as WhatsApp, such as Facebook Messenger, and engaging with the customer to create tailored, personalized experiences that help the customer make decisions about what product they'd like to purchase. So Sephora is really fearless when it comes to digital marketing strategy, when it comes to engagement, and I see them as really moving the fastest when it comes to being where the customer is.
Okay, cool. And then if you go back to the book, I mean, and further into the book, you start talking about, once you've gone through this, or the do more sort of framework, you start move into this future organization, start talking about the nature of organizations in the future, and mention this thing called the 6 rings of customer experience. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the 6 rings of the modern customer experience, if you can imagine, just looks like literally a series of rings. And at the center, at the core of these rings are is your seamless experience. And then comes your collaboration tool, allowing your departments to collaborate. In the 3rd ring is your CRM and the seamless customer journey, the result of creating a powerful CRM program that really listens and remembers the customer. 4th, we've got personalization. The 4th ring, personalization, has largely failed many marketers today because personalization, as we know it, is not very personal. No. When we think about personalization with respect to omnichannel, the only example we generally have is when you search for a product and then it follows you from channel to channel. And that's not personalization. But in the future, marketers and customer experience leaders' ability to personalize and tailor experiences will be everything. In fact, things like chatbots have a lot of promise when it comes to personalization. It's still early here in California, so I'm struggling. My coffee hasn't kicked in. When it comes to personalization, because chatbots can listen, remember, and recognize the customer from last time. That's huge, and being able to scale that is everything. In the 5th ring, we've got all of the many channels, and that can range from social media to in-app messaging to branded communities, phone, email. There's so many channels today, but it's not about each individual channel anymore. It's about creating a seamless experience for the customer that crosses channel to channel. In fact, on LinkedIn yesterday, I was posting about this, that omni-channel generally just means from I see you. I see you, Adrian. I recognize you. When you walk into my store, when you send me a tweet, when you call my call center, I see you. I remember you. I know what product you bought, what the problem was with the product, if there was one, what your preferences are. Maybe even I know that you have, I know you and your wife like jazz or blues.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about, on those channels, the omni-channel experience that doesn't exist today.
Right.
In fact, omni means all in Latin.
Yeah.
There's no way that anyone has successfully implemented an omni or all channel strategy. And lastly, we have in the sixth ring our external stakeholders. These are our customers, our prospects, our partners, influencers, and the general public. And what's interesting today about customer experience and customer service is it's no longer very clear and black and white as far as who we're serving as a company. Today, any person that sends you a tweet, you have the responsibility to respond to them. They might be a customer, they might not be a customer. So now the pool of people who contact you has become much larger, and you are responsible for responding to everyone, because maybe they're not your customer, but other people are watching how you engage with that customer.
Okay, brilliant. That's great. Thank you. I mean, so if I can go back on a couple of those things and ask to get your kind of view on a couple of things. First of all, it'd be interesting to get your view on the kind of personalization, particularly if the counterpoint to that is sort of data and privacy sort of issues, because that's becoming a thing, not just here in kind of Europe, but also in the States as well. There's this, whether it's hacking threats or just like you mentioned before, so the retargeting, people stalking you, and there's some practices that are not necessarily well looked upon, and also not necessarily well understood by both customers and also kind of businesses. So, how do you think? What should companies be thinking about when it comes to sort of personalization and these data and privacy concerns that are rising up, or at least in some quarters?
Absolutely. So, Adrian, I have heard that in Europe, people are much more aware about data and privacy, mostly because much of Europe grew up under communism and they didn't have privacy. They had always the government looking over their shoulder. But in America, we're a little bit spoiled, and we haven't had any governmental regime until now. But it's nothing compared to communism, where people feel like I don't have privacy. So I think in Europe, I've heard that it's on the front page of pretty much every newspaper once a day, whereas in the U.S., we don't think about it as much. But absolutely, data and privacy are big challenges when it comes to personalization, because there's a few reasons. One is creepiness factor. Yeah. Like, how much do you know about me? It's a little bit creepy if you are pulling from all of my social media profiles and you know that I have a 7-month-old girl. How much do you know about her? And how much are you going to engage with me about what you know? It matters. Yeah. And the second thing is this data can be used against the customer. For example, a lot of the information online about customers, say an insurance company is looking to build a premium for a customer, decide how much they're going to have to pay. If the insurance company finds out that that person is a big drinker and a big smoker, guess what? Their premium's going way up. So there are fine lines when it comes to data and privacy. And actually, I believe that it's really up to the company to take a stand and do what's right for the customer. Because clearly, when it comes to technology, the government doesn't get it. Yeah. They are not going to be the foremost thought leaders when it comes to data and privacy. And they're really the last to act. So it's up to the company and the corporation to build with the customer in mind.
Okay. And then the second thing I wanted to come back to is this idea, you talked about omni-channel and things. And the thing that I sort of struggle kind of with is this idea that, we talked about with the proliferation of channels, they went from multi-channel and then went to omni-channel. And it seems as though that everybody's scrabbling around to add channels, which sort of adds complexity to businesses. But what's your view on actually being in all the channels that you can be in, or actually having the bravery or the courage to choose the channels that you're in and actually choose, in almost like minimizing them and almost deciding to be great at almost all, if you like, a few channels rather than mediocre at in a lot of channels.
Yeah, that's a great point, Adrian. I think that there's a lot of confusion now about what it means to be on a social network. And I know that because I bank with a major bank in the US, and I sent them a tweet and a DM, and their response was call our 1-800 number, which is the worst thing you can do to a customer.
Yeah.
I didn't want to call the call center. That's exactly why I sent a tweet. So clearly companies are being lazy. In the book, I talk about how companies need to make it harder on themselves to make it easier on the customer. But historically in business, we like to make it easier on ourselves, the businesses, and harder on the customer. And that's why everyone hates customer service so much. Mm-hmm. People would rather go to the dentist and get a root canal than contact customer service. So I think that there's a balance. I do think you need to show up in these emerging channels, but I also think that you need to, if you're going to be there, do it right. And even if that means taking resources from other departments, mm-hmm. like marketing, and getting the staff and the training to be able to accommodate the customer so the customer has a positive experience. And I always say this, that customer service is marketing. So get some of those marketing resources and those investment dollars and put them to your customer channel effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of my favorite quotes exactly to that point, and it comes from... So I spoke to Gary Vaynerchuk some time ago, a couple of years ago, and he said he was on one of his rants, as he normally is, which are generally brilliant. And he said, why people would normally pay. Well, how much would you normally pay for a Super Bowl 30-second Super Bowl ad? And it's like something like $5 million. And he said, well, what do you get out of it other than, somebody puffs out their chest and went, oh, we got a Super Bowl ad. He said, but imagine the ROI, the extra ROI you would get if you took, you hired 50 extra kind of people and split that money across them and paid for their salary for a year and just had them as dedicated service support sort of people, so you could just amp up the service you're giving to your customers. Imagine the difference in ROI in terms of doing stuff that matters or doing something which is purely ego based. And it's to your point. But he said he was much better at explaining it than I am right now in Mr. Vaynerchuk's kind of like inimitable way. But it is your point. It's that sort of thing around, like you say, great service is great marketing.
Absolutely. Gary Vaynerchuk is so smart, and he's absolutely right. How much money do we spend trying to reach people? The contact center is literally the place where customers make contact with our brands.
Yeah. How
many millions of dollars do we spend trying to get in front of these customers? You know what? They're coming to our contact center, and that's a huge opportunity. And if we provide a good experience, it's common sense that they would be happy to come back. I think that habits are really hard to kick, and in our business mind, it's hard to kick this habit of spending on marketing, advertising, mm-hmm. and not on the customer service and the contact center. So we got to kick the habit. We've just got to keep, you and me, Adrian, drilling this message in front of businesses until they get it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Blake. I'm totally with you on that. So I'm just thinking about the book and thinking about some of the things that we were talking about, and thinking about if somebody's listening in to this or reading the kind of highlights and stuff, and they're thinking, right, that sounds great. I think that Do.O.M.O.R.E framework is going to work for me. But they say, well, I'm not really sure where to start. So it's like a leader or an entrepreneur or something. I mean, where would you recommend they start? What's the best bit of advice you'd say, do this first? What would you say to them, Blake?
The biggest atrocity against a customer is when everyone, starting from the CEO down to the intern, doesn't know what it's like to actually do business with the company. Yeah. Has the CEO worked in the contact center? Have they been on the phones? Have they walked through the online community experience?
Yeah.
Have they purchased a product? So start by knowing what it's like to actually do business with your company. If you personally wouldn't enjoy contacting your own customer service department, then you've got a problem. So I would say, again, start with going through the customer journey and understanding every step of the way what's happening.
Here. I mean, I was just having a conversation with somebody else earlier on, and they said they actually turned around and said almost exactly the same thing, and but they also turned around and went further and said, yeah, people employ mystery shoppers to do that. He said, from my perspective, he says that's cheating and it's just lazy.
Your mystery shopper should be your CEO, and if it's not, you've got a problem.
Well, exactly. So that brings me to my last couple of questions, Blake. And the first one is a bit more of a sort of a personal, so selfish one. It's my ongoing piece of market research because, as you know, we're both writers, and so I published a book last year called How to Wow. And what I've been asking people is about what wow service or wow experience means to them. So I'd be really interested to get your perspective on that.
It's not complicated for me. It's really about listening. When I can tell that someone at a company actually cares about me and makes me feel like they care, they've already won me over.
Right.
In fact, I like this example because I recently gave birth to a baby girl.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the hospital was not the most cutting edge when it came to technology. It wasn't the Ritz-Carlton. It was just an average hospital. And to be honest, it wasn't even that nice. It was a very average old hospital.
Yeah.
But the nursing staff were so warm, were so empathetic, were not afraid to do anything to make my stay at the hospital better. And to me, it made so much of a difference. So you don't have to be the most cutting edge company with the best technology and, the Ferrari of services. But if you actually care about your customers and that comes through in the culture, in the tone, and the language, it's going to make them feel something. And that's why I like the hospital example, because there's nothing more personal than staying in a hospital.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the difference. It's the culture. It's, do your frontline people actually care about your customers, and how are they making that known?
What a great example. Thank you. And so that brings me to my final question that I always ask at the end of these interviews. And I've done now, crumbs, I was counting it up, over 200 of them now. And the question is this, Blake. Is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Oh, wonderful. I would love for people to sign up for my newsletter and find out more about my book, More is More. So please visit me at blakemichellemorgan.com.
Fantastic. Blake, I will make sure we get all that kind of linked up and get people pointed to you, pointed in the right direction to you. But I just want to say thank you so much. Well, first of all, congratulations on the new book, and more importantly, on your new daughter. And thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us today. That's been great.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure.